Hey everybody. So this is the last tutorial on sites and I wanted to cover some polygon modeling features that you're probably already familiar with. And um, this particular example is I just used the Proscenium building here in Atlanta. This is where the Nelson office is up there, you guys, on the 17th floor. And it's a good example because it's got several challenging features about it. Um, it's got this steep incline, as you can see here with this planter wall. And then if we go over to this side of the building, we also have another incline going down that way. So it's falling downhill in two directions. And the main landing up here is flat, so we have to cut into the site. It has some more detailed hardscape stuff going on, as well as like this retainer on this side. So it would be hard to pull this off using just splines and shape merge. You could do that if you were going to be far enough away from it. I suppose too, if you were familiar with RailClone, there's probably some features that could help you out. But in this tutorial, we're just going to be looking at the basic modeling tool set. So here in Max, I started by trying to accomplish the same thing that I demonstrated in the last tutorial, which is just creating our basic shape here from a spline and then projecting these shapes as a shape merge. And the problem with the shape merge, in particular with mesh that doesn't have a lot of tessellation to it, is that even though you might get a decent looking result kind of out of the box, as soon as you go into your sub-object mode and start looking around under the hood to see how Max handled the operation, you're going to find a lot of this kind of thing. And you'll notice I put an edit mesh on there and not an edit poly. So if you wanted to use this, you could go in and apply some basic materials and use some extrude bevel commands and things like that. But ideally, you're going to want to put an edit poly modifier on there to give you better control. And when you do that, you can see how bad the mesh is, really is, right? So you would have to go in here and perform a lot of cuts, and it wouldn't be a good use of your time. And that's the problem with shape merge. If anybody has a better solution, let me know. But I've always run into that. It's similar to Booleans, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it usually doesn't work well when you have a radius like this involved. So if that's the case, you're probably better off just using tools like cut. And that's what I've done here. So starting off with the same plane that I had over here and drawing out these shapes. These aren't projected. These are just shapes to act as guides. I trace these over a satellite image. And then using those guides to cut in these these features using nothing more than the Max Cut tool, which, I mean, it isn't the best, but it performs reasonably well. What I like to do is turn on my snaps. I'll turn on 3D snaps and just cut from vertex to vertex. You can even try turning on your edge and your vert snaps. A lot of times that will help with these cutting operations. But with that being said, just start cutting in the detail with an eye towards where you're going to have material and object transitions. So if we go back and we look at the site, for example, I know that um, I want to create this triangle here for the transition from the tile hardscape back into the concrete, and the same on the other side. So I'm looking for those types of things, as well as where the cut for the stairs is going to land and any expansion joints and so on. And I'm making those decisions early as I start modeling. So again, just going vertex to vertex, trying to make use of the geometry that you have without making it too complicated. And what I mean by that is whenever I form this cut, I'm trying to use this vert to this vert instead of creating a new one. just to keep my polygon counts down in the early stages. So moving on down to this stage, this is just more cutting. And cuts like this are just really easy once you have these basic uh, cuts made that simplify this radius. You can just cut directly across, and Max has no problem doing that. Another thing that I like to do is just go ahead and form some edge loops using constraint tools. So I'll make this connection. That's a bad example. Let me get rid of that and re-demonstrate what I was trying to show. So if we make a connection across this mesh right now, like a new edge loop, you can see it's not going to be straight. So just turn on your edge constraint, and then with the scale active and it's set to the center mode, just go ahead and push that all the way straight and slide this edge on over to both sides. You can also, if you have a straight edge already, you can just slam it to one edge and then peel it back. That's a handy trick to do that fast if you don't want to use the scale tool. Again, that's using the edge constraint. And the reason that you want to do that is that makes it very simple once you get to the point where you want to like tear something off and borrow from this side and move it over. You can just make a selection and then duplicate it as I have over here, and then mirror it, and then it's really simple to tear this side off and delete it. And that's what I've done here. So this new mesh over here is the same as this selection, it's just mirrored. And then once I had that, all I had to do was just bridge these two edges. So I can just select these two edges and then bridge that. Select this edge loop if I want and delete it. So that pretty much covers the sites at this point. I think this and this are the same. I don't see any added detail here. I couldn't do this tutorial in real time. I thought it would just make it too long and too boring to watch. So all I've done to this is move these edges so that they're parallel so that I can start coming in here and adding the detail. I noticed on these images that these columns that support this canopy, whoa, Google did not like that. There we go. They have this different concrete stain that aligns with these columns for the canopy. So I was just trying to roughly copy what they had done, and that's the reason for me moving these edge loops around and starting to get things aligned. At this point, I went ahead and cut off the bottom side of the site because, again, going back to here, effectively this is a driveway and retainer, so I didn't really want to continue it all the way down. I've also brought in new edge loops, which is a fairly simple thing once you have this square quad polygon created, because all you have to do at this point is ring things and connect them as many times as you want, and kind of move some edges around and you're good to go. Alright, so once I got to that point, I identified where the stairs would go as well as the basic elevation of the stairs. Oh, I forgot to mention. So to this point, I've been working on a flat site. There's been no elevation at all to any of these planes. Only once I was ready to add in the cuts and splitting edges did I go ahead and drop this down, because I would have to do it at this point in order to identify the stairs. But to do that globally, I just use an FFD modifier, which is very handy because you can just take your FFD, and if you know how far you want to drop the site, you can just do that with an absolute move command, which is what I did. And I'm eyeballing this, but I'm guessing about a 4.5 foot drop over here, and then maybe a 5 foot drop on this side. And if you had a survey, you would know. I'm just guessing, but again, we have this planter and this very steep incline, and the same thing down on this other side. I don't know why Google is freaking out. Okay, so that's easier to see this if we're looking at it this way, but that's how much of a slope we have in the site. All right, so the stairs are in, and the way that I did those, I like to think of stairs as a massing and just keep them parametric in the beginning. So I knew about how many steps I had, and you can do this with any kind of stairs. You just have to know your rise height. I didn't. This is completely fake, just based from a photograph and a satellite image, but it gets the point across. It's still just a box. And what I want to do to the site at this point is go ahead and split the edge on this side of the stair. That way I can create this landing here. I can flatten it out the way that it's supposed to be. I can't do that at this point because if I move those edges, then you know everything is going to, oh, I guess I'd already done it at this point, so that's a bad example. But if I hadn't split those edges and I moved them up, they would, both polygons would come up with it. So the way you split the edges, since I've already done that one, it's just a tool inside of the modeling stack, and it will allow you to create the two different elevations for these two polygons. And it's under the edit edges, and it's the split command. And so now with that split command, of course, if it does it, let's try that again. Well, I don't know why that's not working, but anyways, it's supposed to work. It worked over here, and it just separates the two edges so that you can move the polygons around. Okay, so back to the stair. Once the stair is masked out, what I'll do is use these outside edges here, those that were already selected, and I'll just detach those from the shape. I'll just copy that over so I can demonstrate that. And then use the border tool and drag the step out that way. That way may be faster than just drawing, trying to snap these together or whatever. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, you're just cutting, connecting, drawing in new edge loops, using the split tool, modifying the overall elevation change with an FFD modifier, just trying to keep things as parametric as you can in your stack. Not that you can really go back down in this without breaking it, but it's always a good idea to try at least. And the other benefit of doing it this way is you already have the detail in your site managed, versus if you were to do a shape merge, you wouldn't have any of this clean geometry, and you wouldn't be able to go in there and draw in these material changes or take it a step further and add things like the floor generator to give you even more tiles. Once I'm this far along, I'll go in and create selection sets up here, or just do it with a material ID. I don't know, maybe I didn't do it on this particular one. I'll probably have it over here though. Yeah. So just so that I can go in and select by material type. That makes like detaching or beveling easier. So like on this one, I went ahead and cut in these reveals just by beveling by polygon for that whole selection. And then I took it one step further and added a floor generator to this plane. So you can add in as much detail as you want. So this curve here was done the same way I've already demonstrated, with using the loft tool or the sweep tool, I guess in this case, and just moving these sub-object verts down to match what I was seeing on the site over here. Let's see. Give that a quick rendering. see what we have. But yeah, if you have any questions about that, just let me know. Or if you have some techniques that you would like to share,